I'm Jay Hetherington with Football Alberta. I'm bringing you an item called 5 Minutes of Football History to you today. What it is an oral history vignette of a specific part of our football past. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, this is 5 Minutes with Football History for Football Alberta. And today we're going to be talking about a very special team and group of people, the 1954 Eskimos. And with me, I have Coach McIntyre, who's been doing a little bit of studying and searching regarding these people and this particular team. And they're kind of different group of people, weren't they?
Absolutely. Probably in Edmonton sports history and throughout the province, we've seen very few teams of people that come from such different backgrounds at that particular time in the 50s come together and have that kind of success, but at the same time retire and make huge contributions to the local and Alberta community.
So can you take us through a little bit about the team in the 1950s and what football was like around here?
Okay, so coming out of World War II, the Stampeders made a huge splash in '49 when they traveled out east and won a Grey Cup. And that was huge for the prairies. That was huge for Alberta. We were on a national stage. So sorry, I may have the year wrong there.
It's okay. I want to remind our listeners and our viewers that this is an oral history. And as Shakespeare says, we remember with advantages. And total recall is not one of the advantages humans have. So what we'll do is we're going to have a conversation, and you'll be the best recollection.
100%. And
just a second. It's the best recollection that you can possibly come up with. Yeah. And away we go.
So in '49, the Eskimos started, and Peter Lougheed was on that team. And a fellow by the name of Pop Ivy came up shortly thereafter in about '51. And he came from Oklahoma and Bud Wilkinson, and they had a huge run there at University of Oklahoma with Wilkinson. Well, Pop Ivy came up here, and we scored a Heisman Trophy winner by the name of Billy Vessels. And when Vessels came up, he only played a year, but there was a strong tie and legacy kind of with University of Oklahoma. Now in '54, there's the famous Hunsinger fumble. We go out and beat Montreal, and we beat them in '55, '56. Now, having taught history for 30 some odd years and absolutely getting a kick out of the old stories, it's the story behind the story. It isn't so much the three wins. It's how Johnny Bright was on track to win a Heisman before he came up here, and was absolutely sucker punched during a play by a fellow from Oklahoma A&M who didn't want who felt it wasn't right for whites to play blacks. No, Bright was at Drake. Rolly Miles came up as a baseball player. Rolly was recruited by the Edmonton Eskimo Baseball Club, and he came over to the Edmonton Eskimos. Rolly Miles had a tough time. Canada, Alberta wasn't this utopia for people getting along happily together. Rolly Miles had a hard time renting houses here. So you have Bright, you have Kwon, but then you've got Jackie Parker from not the South, but from the deep South. And Jackie Parker embraced his fellow teammates to the point where he took Johnny Bright back to Mississippi to stay with him and his mother. Throw in Normie Kwon there, and Kwon couldn't swim in public swimming pools when he was a child, and he goes on to lead the Eskimo. He was an incredible leader off the field, and we don't have enough time in the podcast to talk about these guys in terms of the pranks that they played. We have Earl Lindley, who went on to become a Mormon, who became the head coach at Brigham Young University. We have a kid from Northeast Alberta, Ukrainian, first wave of immigration, Mike Kamech, that actually roomed with Rolly Miles. It was a source of great pride for the first generation Ukrainians that one of theirs made it to the CFL and won a Grey Cup. So you've got these guys from very different backgrounds. Bob Dean was from, his dad worked a steel mill in Pennsylvania, but they all came together in the 1950s, which wasn't easy because they were breaking a lot of barriers, and they achieved this great success. And one of the things that they say over and over again, the old veterans, and I've had a chance to interview a few of them, talk to them over the years, and that they can't imagine any team having that kind of camaraderie, and they can't imagine, then coupled with their success. Now, which came first? I don't know. I happen to believe that team comes first, but it was an amazing run.
Amazing people doing an amazing thing. And you said that you think team comes first. So how does the team aspect of this translate into this great success in your mind?
They had so much fun together that they probably really enjoyed going to practice and playing cards together and having all the stuff that creates the bonds that makes it a little tougher to give up, because you're not giving up on you're not playing for, this isn't going to be very popular with some people, but you are playing for the city of Edmonton. You are playing for the Edmonton Eskimos, but more importantly, you're playing for the guy beside you. And the guy beside you is a tremendous motivator. And that's true in other endeavors, such as battle, et cetera, et cetera. That's probably the best way to put that, I think.
Mm-hmm. And their success kind of rolled on. It wasn't just 1 year, was it?
Well, and that's a super good point. The thing that strikes me about those Eskimos is Grey Cups. Lots of teams win Grey Cups, but the contributions of those gentlemen to our community once they retired are remarkable. And I'm not sure, I've done a lot of reading over the years, and I am a sports guy, but I am not sure we have seen the likes of it anywhere else. And I looked at some of the successful teams of the Argos, but to produce a lieutenant governor from a fellow who wasn't allowed to swim in public swimming pools, to produce Rolly Miles, who became associate superintendent in the separate board, who had trouble getting a place to rent when he first came up to Edmonton, but is embraced by his teammates. And maybe I should talk a bit about that before I get to the community. Don Getty, premier. Peter Lougheed, premier. Lougheed didn't play on those 54, 55, 56 teams, but he became a premier. We have lieutenant governors. We've got Bill Smith, who was a mayor. We've got a whole spat of great businessmen, teachers, community leaders, really phenomenal. And that's not just me as a fan, that's just the facts. Now, another point I should probably make about those Eskimo teams, when you think of the 1954, we're 9 years out of World War II. You have Jim Crow in the United States. You got Bright, who was on the cover of Life magazine for a racist attack on a football field. May have cost him a Heisman Trophy winner because the fellow broke his jaw. His name was Phil Bag. Now, that name will live on a few pranks that they used to play on Bright with the Eskimos. That might be another podcast. But
once again, I'm saying this is a family podcast, and at another time.
At another time. Yeah. For those guys, so you can imagine you are a child in Alberta, predominantly a white community, for you to look at your heroes, and your heroes are hugging people of other faiths, other races, other colors, whatever, however you want to divide that team. They didn't divide themselves that way. And that is, so where does sports fit into that? The Jackie Robinson in the States, everybody knows about Jackie Robinson, but how many Canadians know the Johnny Bright story and Life magazine and that terrible attack on him? It's the 50s Eskimos. If this was America, mm-hmm. Hollywood would have taken this and they would have ran with it. Really a phenomenal story.
But it's not, and it's Canada. And this is sometimes the way we treat our own heroes, isn't it? But you coming here today and talking about it brings life to what actually happened. How do you feel about doing that?
in these times, I think it's especially important to look at how you create team, working towards a common purpose, because I think we've lost a sense of community, a little sense of community these days. And I think when we look at the greatness that was achieved by that team, both on the field and off, there's some valuable lessons to be learned. And having goals, and one of those goals should be, we're gonna take from the ticket holders their money, we're gonna put a good product on the field, but we're gonna go beyond that. And then we are going to create a legacy in our community, which those gentlemen did. I think that's something, I think the Eskimos and all professional sports teams should learn from. I sound a little preachy, don't I, Jay?
Well, Reverend, I think you've done a really good job. Coach McIntyre, you've brought to light a very important part of our history in Northern Alberta and for all of the CFL and all of football. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. And I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you for watching Football Alberta's 5 Minutes of Football History. The recollections of the participants are subject to the limitations of human memory, and their opinions are entirely their own and not necessarily that of Football Alberta.